Do you have the discipline to exercise consistently? This is one question that a lot of people wrestle with because even though they know they want the benefits of exercising consistently, they're not super confident in their ability to do so because they feel like they don't have the discipline to do that. On today's episode of the Exercise is Health podcast, Julie and I are going to explore this question and give some insights on what you can do to actually help improve your self-discipline and make sure that your exercise gets done. We're going to cue the intro song and then we're going to dive right into this conversation. Welcome to the Exercise is Health podcast, where we're talking about exercise, health, and the interconnectedness of the two. We are your hosts, Charlie
and Julie,
and we will be coming to you every single week from our studio, Muscle Activation Schaumburg. Hey, what's going on, exercisers? This is Charlie. Before we dive into this week's episode, I want to let you know that this Thursday, I'm going to be hosting a training called Exercise for Life Secrets. So if you are looking for the key things, like the top things that you need to be doing in order to consistently and sustainably build your health with exercise, that is exactly what I'm going to be discussing in this Thursday's training. All you have to do to get registered for free is go to secrets.exerciseforlifemethod.com. Now, without further ado, let's dive into this week's episode. Hey, welcome back, exercisers, to the Exercise is Health podcast. We are your hosts, Charlie
and Julie,
and we're coming to you from our studio, Muscle Activation Schaumburg, here in Schaumburg, Illinois, where we believe that your health is your most valuable asset, and the single best thing that you can do to both boost and protect this asset is exercise. Specifically, exercise is geared towards building the health and function of your muscles. Now, so many of you exercisers have taken the time to leave us a rating and review on Apple Podcasts, and we truly appreciate that. So we want to take a moment right now to highlight one that we recently received.
This 5-star review says, "Great information. These episodes come from sound foundations. My advice to all is to hire a good trainer to take your fitness to the next level." Thank you so much for that review. We love hearing from you. And if you wouldn't mind taking a few minutes to rate us and review us on Apple Podcasts so that we can build up our reviews, and you might be hearing your review on the next podcast.
Now, today we are going to be talking about something that has a really big influence on whether or not people exercise consistently, and that is their self-discipline. And even their perceived self-discipline about themselves, and whether or not like they feel like they have enough self-discipline to exercise consistently and even embark on trying to exercise consistently. So if you feel like, do I really want to undertake this whole exercise thing? Do I really want to block out the time in my schedule? Do I really want to engage in the workouts over and over and over? I just feel like if I start, eventually I'm going to stop. Well, then listen up, because we have some steps that you can follow to help ensure that you not only extend your exercise longevity, but help actually make it way easier for you so you don't have to rely strictly on self-discipline.
Yes, this is going to be such a good conversation because I think a lot of us feel, that we don't have the self-discipline, or that we don't feel like, will I be able to consistently show up if I work out once? Will that really matter? Because, I feel like I have to do it every day. That's what Julie and Charlie say. So we're going to talk about some practical tips that you can put into your brain and into your lifestyle to help you with this self-discipline, because I think we all need a little help sometimes. We all have a million things pulling us in a million directions, but if we can not only have the interest to work out, but then use some of these principles, then it kind of will help us with our self-discipline, meaning showing up. I think that when we think, I don't have the self-discipline to exercise consistently, that means you feel like, will I show up consistently? So these principles will help you show up more consistently, and it'll really help no matter how much self-discipline you think you have.
All right, Julie, let me ask you this.
Okay.
How often do you brush your teeth?
Every day.
Is it because you really like brushing your teeth?
I hate brushing my teeth.
I hate brushing my teeth too.
I actually like the end result, but I always dread the thought of doing it.
Well, that's the thing, right? Is like the things that we do habitually, most of stuff I feel like I don't actually enjoy doing. I just do it for the benefit of doing it, right? So brushing my teeth, taking a shower, eating, like all the necessary, sleeping, like all the necessary stuff that we actually need to do to survive. I don't really like enjoying, I don't really like doing it all that much, but I do it because I know that I need to do it, right? And so exercise kind of falls into that category for a lot of people where you don't have to like it, but if not liking it is the thing that's standing in your way of doing it, and that's the reason why you feel like you're not going to adhere to it, well, then we need to explore some other things in your life that maybe you do habitually, or you've made really easy for yourself to do, but you still don't enjoy doing it, right? So here's the thing is like, you don't have to cook yourself a 7-course meal in order to eat every day. You can make it really easy and really convenient. You don't have to take a 45-minute bath in order to clean yourself every day. You can make it really easy and really convenient. So all the stuff that you don't like to do, that you know you still need to do, we find ways in our lives to make it really easy and really convenient. And that's what we need to do with exercise.
I love that analogy, Charlie. I was just thinking literally the other day, aside from this conversation, about how a lot of women do self-care and grooming. And I feel like I don't participate in the same way, but I still want the outcome, meaning I want to feel clean. I want to feel put together. And so I was talking to one of my friends, and her routine is like, okay, at the end of the evening, she takes her shower. It's 20 minutes. She does this exfoliating brush. She does these different like hair treatments in the shower where there's a timer. And when she gets out, and then, she shaves her legs and uses special cream. And when she gets out, there's like this special after bath situation that she does, and a certain towel with her hair. And then there's a hairstyling regimen, and then a 3-step facial products that it's very confusing to me. And that's, to me, sounds very like overwhelming. And to her, she's like, it's how I feel like I can take care of myself, even though it takes an hour. To me, thinking, oh my gosh, I cannot, just to feel clean and put together, it doesn't take me an hour to do that. I hop in the shower. If I get 2 minutes of no children screaming at me, that feels like a lifetime. That feels great. And I can get clean, all the things I need to do. So I think when we're thinking about the outcome, we can start structuring our mind about the outcome of what we're looking for, not necessarily the doing, because I think the doing is what can become daunting. And so thinking, why are we exercising? If you're listening to this podcast, it's very likely that you are exercising strictly to promote the health and function of your body. So we don't have to think, 5 times a week I need to go for a 3-hour bike ride. That would be over the top and overwhelming. But if we think, okay, 5 times a week, I'm going to invest a little bit of time to improve the health and function of my body, that's a really good little baby step to get us in the right direction for your mindset.
Yeah, that is a really good baby step, because when it comes to mindset, the majority of people are moving away from pain as opposed to moving towards pleasure with most of the stuff in their life, okay? What I mean by that is as a society, we tolerate a lot of things in our life that we don't like, that are uncomfortable, that are whatever, because they don't hurt enough. They're not uncomfortable enough, okay? Now, myself as an entrepreneur, I'm wired differently, where entrepreneurs are actually very much like locked in on the future, very focused on pleasure seeking and all that. So it's tough for me to understand the whole, well, I'm just going to tolerate this because it doesn't hurt bad enough. But most people are like that. And so then it's like, okay, well, look, the problem with tolerating not exercising because it doesn't hurt bad enough is at some point it hurts really, really bad. Meaning at some point, your health gets to the point that there's very little that can be done to kind of come back from it. So we have to figure out, okay, how can we rewire our brains to, instead of thinking of this thing as like, okay, well, I'm just going to sit in whatever state my body's in until it gets so bad that I'm forced to do something about it. How do we rewire our brains to think, okay, no, I actually need to do something, because the idea of like feeling more energized, the idea of feeling stronger, the idea of feeling healthier, like I have better ownership of my body, is intriguing enough to me, is interesting, is exciting enough to me that I'm actually going to go towards that pleasure, as opposed to I'm only going to act when it's an avoidance of pain. Okay. And so there are some things that we can do for that. And a lot of it has to do with actually how we structure our workouts and the convenience of things. Okay. The more convenient we can make things and the less friction, the less hurdles we have to jump over, then the easier it becomes. All right. Just like brushing your teeth. All you have to do is pick up your toothbrush and you're good. If you can implement a similar system with your workouts, it becomes way easier to do.
Charlie, and I want to add on that the avoidance of pain thing that you said, because it's so true. A lot of us are avoiding, the physical discomforts that come when we have not exercised for a long time. But I want to build that into emotional and mental discomfort and kind of the feeling of letting ourselves down. You don't even know how many times I've had a client come in for a consultation and they are in their 50s. And the first thing they say to me is that I feel fine, but we went on vacation and I couldn't do half the stuff. My tour went up the hill and I was so uncomfortable with, going up the hill because I was so physically out of shape, or I had to sit that activity out because I knew I couldn't do that many stairs physically. So there's like the physical discomfort, and then there's also like the mental, emotional discomfort of feeling like you can't do the stuff you want to do with your body. And sometimes those can be together, like in some of the examples I just explained. But if you're listening to this podcast, you might be in that situation already where you're like, yeah, I'm listening because I got to get healthy. I've already not been exercising for my health, so now I need to start. But also, if you are not at that point yet, good news, you can start now before there's even an issue. Kind of like I teach my 2-year-old, she needs to brush her teeth. She could care less, but I know that in 20 years, she would like to smile at her date across the table and her date not be like, ooh, I don't know about that mouth situation. So I don't want her to, feel that emotional discomfort. I want to protect her from that. So it's kind of like that with exercise. So anyways, I just wanted to open that up to, it doesn't necessarily mean that you have to be in physical pain, but it could also be that you want to maintain ownership of your body and maintain the power that you have, that you can make choices to do things or not do things, and your body won't make those choices for you.
Okay, so how do we go about setting up our lives? How do we go about setting up our schedule? How do we go about setting up our workouts to be able to get these in easier without completely hijacking everything, without being like, well, I'm just going to clear my entire schedule and I'm only going to focus on my exercise? Because that's completely unreasonable, right?
I think a lot of people think that.
Well, that's what we think. That's what so many people think that we have to do is like, well, if I'm going to exercise, that means from now until the end of the month, I can't have anything on my schedule and I just need to focus on my exercise. And then when I get there, then I need to clear the entire next month. And I only need to, no, you don't need to do that. In fact, you can do everything that you're already doing. You don't need to change your lifestyle at all. But there are some things that you need to tweak. There are some things that you need to move around. And there are some things that you need to become observant of that will allow you to get your workouts in more consistently without having to rely on willpower and self-discipline.
Love it. I think the first tip that's coming to mind that I give to a ton of my clients is using your dead space in your schedule. I love this tip because you know how many times trainers or health people have been like, so Julie, you're struggling to get in your workouts now, so why don't you just wake up an hour earlier? The house is quiet. You can just get it in then. And be like, well, I've only slept 3 hours up to that point. If I put my kid down, he's going to wake up. So that's not really going to work for me. I mean, ideally, there was a time and place in my life where that would work. And that takes a little bit of self-discipline, especially I'm not a morning person. But the dead space really works well for me. So for example, dead space is time in your schedule that you have that you wouldn't necessarily be able to schedule stuff in. For example, you take your kid to karate and then you're standing there for 45 minutes while your kid takes karate class. Well, good news. if it's the summer or even if it's the winter, you could take exercise clothes and get your exercise in for those 45 minutes while your kid is taking karate. You're also allowed to stand in the back of the parent observation room and do your squats, do your push-ups, do your jumping jacks. It's kind of weird, but everyone will just, realize that you're the weird healthy person and people will probably join in. So find dead space in your schedule to find time to fit in some time to exercise.
Now, I love this tip. This is one of my favorites. And I remember when we kind of first ran into this idea, I was talking to a guy who specialized in building out fitness centers in corporate buildings and in like high-rise buildings in downtown Chicago. And I asked him, like, how do you get these great deals on these leases? Because, I mean, his price per square foot was ridiculous compared to what the average person would pay. He said, well, what I look for are buildings that have dead space. And what dead space is it's kind of this awkward space that really nothing else can go in. So it just sits being completely unused. And all buildings have this. So I come in and I write the proposal to say, I'm going to turn this dead space into something that's actually profitable for the building, build it out with a fitness center. And now all of a sudden, boom, he gets a great deal on his lease because that space was just sitting there. Nobody else was going to use it. Another business wasn't going to come in. So it's awesome. Here's the thing. Those dead spaces, they're within your day as well. And there's two ways. There's two really easy ways to know when you have dead space. All right. The first one is when you pick up your phone. All right. Most of us are not picking up our phone to necessarily respond to something. Yes, sometimes we get a call that's like, okay, immediately I have to respond to this. Or sometimes there's a text that we feel like we need to respond to right in that moment, or an email. Most of the time, be honest, most of the time you pick up your phone, you're doing so to scroll. You're doing so to, all right, what's new on Facebook? What's new on Instagram? Let me just scroll through my email, see if there's anything that I've missed. All right. That scrolling time, that's dead zone time. That's time that you could use to get a workout in. Now, you might not be thinking, okay, well, it's not like I spend an hour doing that. Well, maybe not in one block, but I bet if you checked your screen time report, you would see how much you're doing that throughout the day, and all that adds up. So understanding that, one, that time is there, we're filling it with scrolling. So that's time number one. Time number two is exactly like you were saying, Julie, when we are required to be somewhere that doesn't require our participation. All right. So taking kids to sports practice and kind of waiting for them to be there. There's a lot of times throughout a day where we're just waiting for something, where we are waiting to get to our next meeting, where we are waiting for, to hop on the call with the client, where, we are waiting. We have completed our last task and we are waiting to start our next task, and it's dependent on something or somebody else. And there's just kind of this awkward time there. All right. So that's a dead space. Now, I'm not saying that, okay, you have 15 minutes before your next call that, in your suit and tie or whatever, you start doing jumping jacks in your office, but you look to see what else you could do during that time, whether that is, paperwork or emails or whatever. You put that in there, and then you circle back at the end of the day and you realize, oh, all that stuff that was piling up at the end of the day, I got that done during those dead zone times. And now I have an extra 20 minutes, 30 minutes, whatever, to get a workout in.
Another good one is if you are an air traveler and you're at the airport a lot. It's a great place to get in walking. It's a great place to get in like weighted squats.
Yes.
Stuff, because you have, your backpack or your bags or whatever. Another one that a lot of people don't think of, but I think is a really good one that goes with this dead space, is if you are able to do slight shifting with your time relative to your drive. So here in Chicagoland, we don't say distance by miles. We say distance by the amount of time it takes to get there, because if you guys don't know, we are in the suburbs and it could take us 25 minutes to get downtown to Chicago, and it could also take us 2.5 hours to get downtown to Chicago.
It's so funny you say that, because I have no idea what the distance is between Schaumburg and Chicago.
I have no idea.
But I have a relative idea of the time based on the time of day.
Based on the time of day and the day. So I have had a handful of clients that work in the suburbs, and their commute to get back home when they get off of work at 4 or 5 p.m. is an hour and a half. So what they told me is they said, I'm just going to come stay at work. I'm going to work out with you, and that's an hour. And then once my hour is done, it takes me 30 minutes to 45 minutes to get home. So it really actually ends up being a much more potent use of time because it was A, sit in the car for an hour and a half, or B, get in a workout and drive home in about the same amount of time. Maybe 15 minutes more, but about the same amount of time, which I was like, what? That's so cool. So anyways, if there are times of your day that you can shift around like that and choose efficient times, something like that could really help you with your self-discipline too, because the option is just so blatantly clear. You should not sit in the car for an hour and a half. You should work out and then go in the car.
Exactly. Okay. So that's kind of the first sticking point that we want to talk about is like this time sticking point. All right. The next sticking point that we want to talk about is the location or the environment. Okay. A lot of times people feel like, well, I need to go to a gym in order to exercise, or I need to have like my whole space set up in order to exercise. And those are both great options. Some people prefer exercising outside. Here's the thing. When it comes to your environment, the less work you can put in order to have your environment ready, in order to be in the environment that you need to be in order to exercise, the easier it's going to be for you to get done consistently. All right, what does this mean? This means if you're working out at home, if it's feasible for you, don't try to set up your space like right before you're exercising. All right. Now, if you're exercising in your living room and, everybody else is in there during the day. And so like you need to set it up, because you don't want people tripping over your weights or whatever. Oh, okay, cool. But if you're exercising in, a corner of your basement and, nobody else really operates in that area, then leave your stuff out. Let your stuff be so you don't have to pull everything out every single time you're going to go exercise. Okay. Same idea for like if you're going to the gym or something like that. I'm not saying like leave your weights out. I'm saying find a place that is convenient for you, that you don't have to do all this prep work in order to be able to utilize. So if you are exercising at home, try to have your space already set up. If you're exercising not at home, at a gym or at a studio or something like that, try to make sure that it is convenient to get to, something that is between work and the office, or, an area of town that you frequent. And that will help from a location perspective to eliminate that sticking point.
I love that tip with the environment. Like just get those hurdles out of your environment. And I think also I want to invite you to break down any like mental, emotional barriers you have to what environment you think you should be in. Do what works for you. Let me give you an example of this. If you think I'm too busy to leave the house, I have to work out at home, but I never do because it's so unmotivating for me. I hate working out at home, but that's really I'm just never going to do it because I have to work out at home. Well, guess what? You don't have to work out at home. Talk to whatever support people you have. Go buy yourself a gym membership. You're allowed. Go put your running shoes out and go outside. You're allowed to change the environment. You don't have to be stuck to whatever you think you should be using. Or if you think, wow, it's so inconvenient to go to the gym. I hate going to the gym. I'd rather work out at home. Well, then go buy yourself some stuff to use at home. I give you permission to do this. I think so many of us have limiting self-beliefs of what we can and can't do with our workouts because of the story we've been told about exercise, the story that we tell ourselves about our lifestyle and exercise, this whole combination. Think about this. What will make you do exercise? I want to tell you a little story about what I did a couple of years ago that really worked out. So Charlie and I have always had a gym because we have a gym. We're personal trainers and we have clients come in. And so we have all this access to amazing equipment here at our studio. I love it. But I really was starting to feel like I really want to exercise more at home. Like I really want to exercise more at home. Like I want to wake up, put my exercise clothes on and work out and get it done. And so I remember feeling like, but oh my gosh, like, would it be worth it to invest in equipment at home? I'm not very good at running. So I remember I hemmed and hawed over this for a couple months. And then I told Charlie, I said, Charlie, I really love cycling. I really want to buy a cycling bike, but there's a problem. Cycling bikes are very expensive. They're going to be $1,000 to $2,000. And I remember Charlie said, great, let's buy one. So we bought one, and ever since then, I've cycled and exercised more at home than I ever have, because collectively we decided, okay, we can have something at home that's easy and accessible. And I had to break that belief that I was allowed to spend money on equipment for my house, because I always thought it had to be here at the studio. But once I got over that, I was able to work out way more. So look at your own like self-beliefs and your own setup of what you think you can have and what you think you can't have, and really think about, well, what would make me do it? And that can include hiring a trainer or buying a program or going to a class at a gym. A lot of people dismiss themselves thinking, well, I could do it alone. Great. Well, are you? If you're not, you're allowed to spend money on it. It's worth it.
Exactly. Now, I want to add one more story. And if you're sitting there thinking, well, this tip's kind of ridiculous, like how big of a difference does it actually make if, your environment is all set up for you and whatnot? I'm going to be honest with you. For me, it's a huge deal. And it's a huge deal to the point where if I put my workout clothes, like you talked about the cycle bike, Julie, if I put my workout clothes and my shoes next to the bike so they are already there in the morning, I am way more likely to get my workout in than if my clothes are tucked away and my shoes are out in the garage. If it's that scenario, I feel a lot more internal friction about just starting the process of going to do the workout. The workout is exactly the same. But because the night before I've taken my shoes and I've taken my workout clothes and I've put them right next to the bike, it becomes way easier. And it would seem like, oh, that's ridiculous. Like it shouldn't make a difference. And I agree. It probably shouldn't make a difference. But for me, I found it to be a huge difference maker. Just eliminating the steps of hunting down my clothes and hunting down my shoes, even though I already know where they are. And it's not like they are, I have to go really far to get them. Okay. So it can seem like this tip is, not going to be that big of a deal. I'm telling you, if you implement it and like actually stick to it, you'll find that it does become a big deal just to have everything set up and ready to go for you and just eliminate those hurdles in the moment when you're trying to exercise.
That's a great tip. And also, Charlie, your shoes are really big, so it's like everyone would trip on them if you leave them out. So that works out.
That's true.
The last thing I want to leave you guys with, and it's to piggyback on this idea of like, what will you do? Because a lot of us always think like, well, if I could logically think through of all the things that could happen and would happen and what, I think we get really in our head about exercise, but we had to think back, what are we actually going to do? And I have one client that she always says this, and I love it because I think it's so true for a lot of people, but she always books her sessions way in advance of the actual time. And she always does it when she finishes a current session. And she does that because she always feels her best right after she finishes working out. She does not like working out at all. So she always books with me so that she does work out. So when she's on that high of feeling good, feeling accomplished, feeling like I did it, she goes ahead and books for her next sessions that are months out. She comes in every week, but she always wants to make sure that she's booking ahead so that, number one, she's doing it when she's in the mindset of, yes, I can do it. Yes, I'm doing it. And yes, I've done it. And also, she's doing it so that it's not a thought that has to happen the day of. Because when it happens the day of, you also have your checklist of things you have to do that are not working out relative to work, relative to home, relative to your relationships or your kids or your spouse, all those things. So do it in advance, schedule it in advance, and do it when your brain is like ready to rock and roll, which is usually when you're feeling good right after a workout.
Yeah, this is a really big one because it's going to allow you to limit the decisions about like what to do with your workouts when you already commit in the moment of like, okay, this is what I'm going to do. This is what I'm going to do it. This is where I'm going to do it. All the different kind of friction points that we've brought up, this helps to minimize all of those. So the biggest things that we find that people run into when it comes to like adhering to their workouts is number one, time, number two, location, and number three, like what to do. All right. So if you can follow these tips, if you can follow this plan of action of, utilizing your dead zones, of trying to make sure that the space is convenient, that it's set up and everything like that, and you plan what you're going to do ahead of time, whether that is, you're going to work with your trainer 3 weeks from today, or, you're going to pull up the MAS home workouts bundle and you're going to log in and you're going to get your workout. You got it all pulled up the night before, so you know exactly what you're going to do. The fewer decisions you have to make in real time, the less friction there is going to be to you actually getting the workout in. And then you don't have to rely on self-discipline. Then you don't have to think about like every single tooth that you're going to brush. You can just brush your teeth. You can just go and do your workout. Then it becomes as simple and as straightforward and as convenient as just brushing your teeth. So who do you know that needs to hear this episode? Who do you know that feels like their self-discipline or lack thereof is getting in the way of them exercising consistently? Share this episode with them so they can learn about 3 really straightforward things that they can take care of immediately right now to limit the amount of self-discipline that will be required for their workouts and help make getting their exercise in as convenient as brushing their teeth. And while you're online, head on over to Apple Podcasts and leave us a rating and review. It helps people find this episode when they're looking for information on exercise and when they're looking for information on health. So if you found value in this conversation today, let us know by leaving us a 5-star rating and review. Well, thanks so much for tuning in. We always appreciate it. Have a fantastic week, and we'll talk with you all next week. So what'd you think about that episode? Did you find the information useful? If you enjoyed what we discussed today, then you are going to love the Exercise for Life Secrets training, which you can get registered for free by going to secrets.exerciseforlifemethod.com. It's going on this Thursday and space is limited. So head there now, secrets.exerciseforlifemethod.com to get signed up. This podcast is for information purposes only. The statements and views on this podcast are not medical advice. This podcast, including Julie and Charlie Cates, disclaim responsibility for any possible adverse effects from the use of information contained herein. Opinions of guests are their own, and this podcast does not endorse or accept responsibility for statements made by guests. This podcast does not make any representations or warranties about guest qualifications or credibility. This podcast may contain paid endorsements or advertisements for products or services. Individuals on this podcast may have a direct or indirect financial interest in products or services referred to herein. If you think you have a medical issue, consult a licensed physician.